guys, it's Kelly Latavola here, and I'm back with another video for W+9. Today's video is kind of a twofer because I just had all this beautiful distress ink left over and I couldn't bear to not use it. So we're going to be using Flora and Fauna 2, the Beautiful Bouquets Ranunculus set, and then the sentiments will be from Kind Soul and the Modern Anemones. So I have my mini Misty here. I'm working on Canson watercolor paper. I'm going to go ahead and use my static tool because I'm going to be doing some white heat embossing. So I'm going to ink my stamp up with some Versamark. And that's one of the bonuses of doing it in the Misty, is if you feel like you didn't get good pressure or good coverage, then you can just stamp it in the exact same spot as you did before. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that down. And then once I'm happy, and I really gave it good pressure in the middle, I wanted to make sure I got a good impression. I'm going to go ahead and use some white embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp, and then I'm going to heat set that once I'm sure I don't have any stragglers laying around and all of my areas are covered. So the purpose of this, I guess, was to do some super quick watercoloring. When I color, I tend to get inside my own head and, I want it to look this way or I want it to look that way. And sometimes you find these techniques that are stunning and they require like zero effort from you. And this is one of these and I love it. So I picked the medium and small butterflies from the Flora and Fauna 2. I stamped those out on some white cardstock from W+9, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the white heat embossing and then go ahead and make sure that those are all melted and good. And then we will move on to the actual background. For my background, I decided to use distress inks. I pulled out a couple of different colors that I thought that I would really like together. And then my game plan was to just slap them on the card, which is pretty much what I did, as you'll see here in a minute. I'm creating a palette on my Ranger craft mat, and then I'm just laying down clean clear water, hello, in the areas that I want to add the color to. So it's hard to see, and I do have my stamp set off to the left-hand side so I could kind of see the areas, since it is difficult to see with the white heat embossing. And then I'm just going to start picking up color. So in this flower, I put some abandoned coral, I put some ripe persimmon, worn lipstick, and a little bit of fossilized amber. And it looks like a hot mess. I mean, it's not pretty, it's not good, but it will be. Yeah. So just have a little faith. If yours looks like this when you start, just remember how mine looked at the end. So I'm just going to keep building up that color, and each time I'm adding different amounts of the color, I am adding less water or more water. I'm really not being very particular. Like I said, the whole purpose is for this to be quick and you still get a beautiful result. There is a small little bud off to the right hand side there, and I went ahead and filled that in. They also have in this set, so the way that Dawn drew it was to be a bouquet, and that's why they're called Beautiful Bouquets, so they can really carry a card, and I love that. This, I wanted there to be some shading on the berries, but I didn't want to pull out another color, so I actually put down abandoned coral, and then I dropped in a little bit of peacock feathers to do the shading to make my berries a little bit darker. For these little flowers that are included in the bouquet, I thought they kind of looked like little buttercups, so I decided to make them yellow. Plus that would be complementary to the color of the ranunculus that I have going on. I found it difficult not to go back and try to add the shading where I thought the shading should be. This was all, I mean, it is to show you guys, but it's also kind of a challenge for myself because I do get very in my head about coloring. So for the leaves, I wanted them to be a variety of colors, which is why I chose different blues and yellows. So for some of them, I added yellow. For some of them, I added blue. For some of them, I didn't even use green. For this one here, I used peacock feathers and fossilized amber, and I let it make green in the middle. So I went ahead and kept doing the same things that I was doing, filling all of those out. I did go back in and add more intense color to my flowers. When watercolors, or in this case distress inks, dry, they dry back. And what that means is they get softer and they get lighter. And I wanted there to be some areas that were a bit brighter in my flower. So while it's still wet, I'm going back and just adding in just a little bit more intense color. I wasn't trying to be crazy with it. And then this is basically the whole thing. I set it aside to dry. This is all of the distress ink that I have smushed on my desk. I'm spraying it with just clean water, and then I'm going to take another piece of that Canson watercolor cardstock and just dip it right in there. I smushed them around on the desk and I didn't want to waste them. And so usually what I do with these is I set them aside and I do like hand lettering, or I use them to die cut things out of. I don't always use them as a background. In this case, I actually really liked the way that it came out. So I was like, meh, got all the stuff out. Might as well make another card, right? So I just kept it, I dried in between, and then I would go back and dip in some more until I got it to something that I was happy with, that there was some variation. I've cut it down. It's all dry, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I've already done. I'm going to use the same stamp, the Ranunculus, and I'm going to white heat emboss it. You can barely see it, but it's not meant to necessarily be a focal point for this card. The color is. I wanted them to kind of match, because I have a problem with matching. Seriously, this nail polish that you see, I have shoes that match it, and I wear them together. If I don't have the nail polish that matches, I have real issues all day. But anyway, when you're stamping on vellum, you want to go straight up, straight down, and make sure you're using an anti-static tool, because vellum does have a tendency to pick up particles that cling. So once those are all done, I am going to color the butterflies that were stamped on the white cardstock. I picked some blue greens. I thought that they would be complementary to the already warm flowers I have going on. I'm doing seriously fast Copa coloring here, guys. I am not being specific. I knew I was going to fussy cut them out, but I will warn you that I am coloring right over my embossing. I have heard people say that this will ruin your Copic nibs. I have never had any issue, but they are your investment, so please do this at your own risk. You could stamp these on watercolor paper and use the distress inks to color them. You could stamp them in black or any other thing that is not embossing and color them with Copics. There's a bunch of alternatives. This is just what I decided to do. Now you'll see that Copics color right over heat embossing. Like, they will color your white heat embossing whatever color you put on top of it. However, because I color everything twice, I noticed that when I would go back over it with my lightest color, it would pick up the darker color that was sitting on top of the embossing. So it kind of like cleaned up my lines for me. If you don't color twice, or you just want to remove alcohol marker from the top of your white heat embossing, you can go in with just regular alcohol and a Q-tip, or colorless blender and a Q-tip, or just a very lightly saturated rag, and just rub it over the top of it. That'll remove all of the things that will sit on your embossing. So once those are done, I felt like this, even though it wasn't meant to be a focal point, it wasn't legible enough. So I decided to go in and add a drop shadow. And that just means that I'm coloring as if my light source is in the top right. So when you do a drop shadow, you want to pick a light source. And so all of my shadows will be in my bottom left. And I just picked 2 gray markers on the lighter side, because I'm not trying for it to be super eye-catching. I just didn't like how it faded into the background so much. So I'm going with the C3 and adding in that shadow, which is basically just a line. And then I'm going to blend out that C3 with a C1, so it does kind of meld into the background and it doesn't look as stark as just a line that's drawn next to it. So with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and start stamping my sentiments. The hello is from the Kind Soul, and the friend is from the Modern Anemones. They are designed in the same font so that you can mix and match them and use them together. Once I had the sentiment down, I felt like I needed some more black, so I picked up some black soot distress ink and just kind of pushed it onto an acrylic block. I'm going to just use some just clean water in my paintbrush, the same, what is this, number 2 round, and then I'm going to add water to it and just kind of flick it onto that panel. Now this gives like a really fine mist. If you want bigger droplets, which eventually I do, and I just start flicking it directly. That gave me a little bit more darkness and it felt like it made more sense to me. So I'm going to adhere this. You can see my card base in the background, which is the charcoal from W+9. That's their cardstock. And then I'm using white fun foam to pop it up, but it's also going to help me with any warping that I got because of all the water that I had put on that. The last thing that I did with this particular piece oh no, I gotta add the butterflies, guys. Woo, getting ahead of myself. So these are the Vellum Butterflies. I fussy cut them out. And I'm just going to adhere them where their bodies are. There's enough embossing there that you won't be able to see it through the vellum, so not a big deal. And then it also gives the card just a little bit of extra character because I'm not adhering the wings, so they will stand up and be really texturized. So this really lets the color be the main focal point. I love that. So some clear Wink of Stella and some sequins on there. And then we are done with that card. We're moving on to the one that I was originally trying to create. So you can see all of the watercoloring is dry now. It does not look a hot mess anymore. They're super pretty. And I'm going to just add 2 of those blue-green butterflies, and I'm doing the same thing, only adhering the bodies. For this sentiment, I decided to just go with the hello. The hello friend felt very large, and I am going to be stamping this in W+9 ink. Normally I go with the black, but this is actually the gray. And it just seemed a little softer since I had all of that white going on. And then those are both of the cards. So if you have a friend who loves clean and simple cards, you got a card for her. And if you have a friend who loves kind of busy, really colorful cards, you got a card for her. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.